Hey there, Daily Bible Time, and Dominic Steele here in the 10 passages you would never preach on at Christmas. And we're working through Glen Scrivener's list, and each day on Daily Bible Time we're picking one of his passages, and I'm imagining at the end of this we'll pick one of those passages and I'll teach on it on Christmas Day at Village Church, and I hope you can be with us on Christmas Day to celebrate the birth of Christ. Next on Glen's list is Matthew chapter 1 and the first 17 verses of Matthew chapter 1. It's the genealogy passage, and look, bad news for Glen. I actually have preached on this passage on Christmas Day, not once, but twice. I just checked in my diary, once in 2007 and once in 2016. And so how to approach it? Well, I looked at the authentic backstory of Christmas. The chapter of Matthew's Gospel, or the opening of Matthew's Gospel, is the historical record of Jesus Christ, the Son of David, the son of Abraham. And first, just to note, it is a historical record. There are people associated with Christmas who do not exist. Santa Claus, for example, but Jesus does exist. He is a figure of history. It's the historical record of Jesus Christ. And so when organisations like Sydney City Council try to make Christmas not about Christ, that's not a neutral thing. That's actually a lie. Secondly, Jesus' name is Jesus, but his title is Christ. My name is Dominic, but you could give me the title of pastor. Liam, his name, it's Liam, but you could give him the title music director or magnification pastor. But to call somebody Christ is to call them king, ruler, preeminent one, the person in charge. So when Matthew opens with the historical record of Jesus Christ, he's saying the historical record of Jesus the King. And then he goes on to say the son of David. King David was the great ancient leading king of the Jews who reigned as king of Jerusalem, king of Israel, in around about 1000 BC. And in the Old Testament, at around about 1000 BC, God promised King David that David would have a son, a descendant, who would reign on his throne forever. And so, key point in the backstory, now here is someone who is described in the opening statement of the gospel as son of David, the historical record of Jesus Christ. It's the record of the genealogy of one who will reign on David's throne forever. Jesus is the promised son of David, the one who will rule on God's throne. And then also he says son of Abraham. It's the genealogy of the son of Abraham. And Abraham was the father of the Jewish nation. Abraham started out as a nomadic goat herder. Then chapter 12 of the Bible, God makes promises to Abraham. And God promises Abraham he will become a great nation. There'll be land, people, and blessing. And through Abraham, the whole world will be blessed. And so now there is one who's come who is the descendant of Abraham. And so this birth of Jesus, this moment at Christmas, it's the beginning of God's blessing to the whole world. That's the backstory in just the first verse of Matthew's Gospel. And so I take it the reason that Matthew chose to open his Gospel with this genealogy is to establish loud and clear that Jesus is the one who's come to fulfill God's promises, stretching all the way back through the Old Testament, the promised son of Abraham who will bring God's blessing to the earth. And that is just another reason why Christmas is such a big deal. But as soon as you start to read the genealogy, you start to read that it's complex, because Abraham fathers Isaac, and Isaac fathers Jacob, and Jacob fathers Judah and his brothers. And you realize, Jesus is really human. He comes from a real human family with all the problem and muckiness and sin and wickedness of our families. And as you do the backstory, you discover there's person after person who is marked by sin and story and intrigue. And you see in these first 17 verses of Matthew's Gospel the real, it's the human nature of Jesus, the humanity of Jesus. Actually, you see in verses 18 through 25, the passage goes on to say, Matthew's Gospel goes on to say, Emmanuel, God with us. You see the divinity of Jesus in the back half of chapter 1, but in the front half of chapter 1, we see the humanity of Jesus, and we realize that Jesus is one of us who's come to save us. And you're very aware as you read Jesus's family tree, the scandal, the intrigue, the conflict, the pain, the drama, the anguish, the hurt, the embarrassment, the use, the abuse, and the shame of his family tree. And you're reminded that that family tree is pretty much my family tree, that all of us as individuals have failed God. All of us as individuals haven't lived up to God's standards and God's standards of perfection. None of us live up to our own standards, let alone God's standards. And actually, at that point, you can see, yes, I can see how I can explain sin from this passage. I can see how I can explain that God is sending Jesus, the King, in this passage. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. There's lots to preach on in a really good way on from these opening verses of Matthew's Gospel. If you're a minister and tuning in to Daily Bible Time today, I'd recommend the first 17 verses as a great place to speak on on Christmas Day. We won't be doing it this year at Village because we did it 3 years ago. Thanks for joining us on Daily Bible Time this morning, and I'll look forward to your company tomorrow when we tackle another difficult passage, the slaughter of those babies in Matthew chapter 2.